Good afternoon, good early evening. Thanks so much for coming out on this beautiful day to join us for our first lecture in the Design Tech lecture series this fall. And also welcome to all of you that are on Zoom. My name is Jenny Sabin. If you don't know me, I'm a professor of architecture and also professor in the inaugural Design Tech faculty, as well as the inaugural chair for our new multi-college Department of Design Tech. Most of you in the room know quite a bit about Design Tech, but I'll just describe a few sort of key features of this innovative department. The department is multi-college. We are working in collaboration with Cornell Human Ecology, Cornell Tech, Bowers Computing and Information Science, and Engineering, and AAP is the administrating college. And one of our primary missions is to break down disciplinary silos, to bring people together to collaborate on pressing questions and problems that are very current and work across disciplines and disciplinary frameworks. So by bridging expertise and catalyzing exploration, innovation, and collaboration in emerging areas, we have three hubs that we are organized around, including design plus interactions, design plus materials, design plus media, and design plus environments. So I'm really excited to welcome back two of our alums, David Rosenwasser and Jeremy Belotti, to our kickoff lecture. We started this series actually during the pilot work that led to the new department, but this is our first official lecture series welcoming our inaugural class in the MS in Design Technology program. So it's a real pleasure to invite you back. So I have known David for 11 years, which when I counted that back, I couldn't quite believe it. And Jeremy, just a couple of years shy of that. David approached me in 2014 during his first year as a BArch student in the Department of Architecture here at Cornell. He had been selected as a Hunter R. Rawlings Presidential Research Scholar and was interested in working with me in the context of our core collaborative research. David emailed me multiple times. And so I was impressed with this initiative and young talent for entrepreneurship and crafts-based design and fabrication, having successfully started a design and restoration business, and might I add, as a high school student, which is called D Rose Mod, with a side passion for Porsche sports cars. David joined the lab and I immediately involved him in collaborative research, primarily funded by the NSF, and later in the capacity as senior personnel in the lab. Jeremy was also brought to Cornell as a Hunter R. Rawlings Presidential Research Scholar, which is a really unique program here at Cornell connecting undergraduates with core research in the various labs across campus. Beginning in June of 2018, Jeremy also began work in my practice, working on an important high-profile project at Microsoft Research, where he had the opportunity to work with some incredible researchers there. I also had the privilege of advising David and Jeremy's joint thesis project, which I think was one of the first joint theses that successfully went through our process. Their thesis, titled Traces of Making, explored additive manufacturing in clay through the development of porous and highly patterned architectural components using 6-axis robotic arms. They worked with custom designed end effectors to extrude clay into formwork, where pressure changes in the extrusion process augmented and facilitated their design process, where sensing and material feedback served as active design parameters. It was during this joint thesis that Jeremy and David clearly were demonstrating their impactful ability to collaborate and champion each other's strengths and expertise, with Jeremy spearheading the advanced scripting and computational design strategies for the project, while David led the material and innovative fabrication strategies. Both obviously graduated from our BARC program, and importantly, with several peer-reviewed papers under their belts, which is quite remarkable as undergraduate students. It was very clear that David and Jeremy were going to go far. So a bit more about David. David is co-CEO at Rarify. We're going to hear about their innovative practice tonight. He's a 15-year business owner. And as I mentioned, as a teenager, he founded D. Rose Mod, a vintage business focused on collecting and restoring iconic 20th century furniture and design. He holds both a BARC from here as well as an MDes in technology from the Harvard Graduate School of Design, and is also obviously very passionate about design, technology, and authenticity. Jeremy is a designer, computer scientist, and research scientist. Originally, obviously trained as an architect. He's since established a body of work developing new computational technologies for the design industry. In addition to his BARC, he holds two MS degrees from MIT in design computation and computer science. And he's also had an opportunity to work in a number of labs, including the MIT Self-Assembly Lab. David and Jeremy are genuine people. They're curious and they're very humble when it comes to their extraordinary talents, and very passionate about educating diverse and general audiences about the impact and amazing world of design. There's nothing more rewarding as an educator and researcher than watching the stratospheric success of two of your influential and special students. I've learned a lot, both of you. David and Jeremy, very grateful for your friendship. So with that, come on up.
That was quite an introduction. Thanks, Jenny. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Jeremy Bellotti. I'm co-founder at Rarify. This is my business partner, David Rosenwasser, also co-founder and co-CEO at Rarify. Thank you, Professor Jenny Sabin and College of AAP and the Design Tech program for inviting us. We're very excited to be back. It's been a few years, for me at least. I'm very, very happy to be here. So thank you, everyone. Can everybody hear me okay? All right. So this lecture is going to be about a multidisciplinary path from architecture, education, to operating a business in the design industry. It'll be a little bit less about buildings than you might be used to, and a little bit more about business, but all about how a foundation of design and research can create unexpected opportunities. We'll tell you the story of how our business has emerged from these unique opportunities. So before David and I started Rarify, we were students here at Cornell, as Jenny mentioned, in the Department of Architecture. And as we tried to envision our paths after graduation, we found ourselves asking some questions like, how do I reconcile both the technical and creative aspects of my interests? How could I one day have a successful design practice? And how could I contribute something meaningful and positive to the world? Well, we haven't really answered these questions in their entirety yet, and still consider ourselves to be learning new things every day. We have made some progress by taking an interdisciplinary path within our work. So we'll show you how that for us, oscillating between disciplines and methods has allowed us to pursue our shared love of research and education. It's allowed us to spend our time focusing on our own creative passions and intellectual obsessions. And it's also given us the flexibility to experience various avenues of exploration in our work and our lives. Now, that said, the path so far in building our business, Rarify, has demanded that we actively maintain a lot of balance in our work and in our lives, paying not only attention to the fun aspects of the work that we do, but also the challenging and the mundane, the sort of boring aspects as well. It's required us to take significant risks, and it certainly has not been the easy path, though it has been quite a rewarding one so far. So what is Rarify? David, the floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Okay, so Rarify is a business, we sell chairs, right? It's a business that specializes in selling furniture by the most iconic, legendary designers and manufacturers of the 20th and the 21st centuries. We are a leading educational voice on social media, on Instagram, where we use educational videos about design history to create community and also to reach customers interested in our furniture. It's kind of multi-pronged. With our foundations as specialists in vintage 20th century design, we now have 80,000 square feet of operational space, primarily based in Lebanon, Pennsylvania, around where I grew up, including a photography studio and now 2 showrooms. Our main facilities are housed in a former Bethlehem Steel Railroad spike plant. And this is one of our spaces. We also have a dedicated team of staff handling photography, warehouse management, restoration, and shipping. And our collection consists of over 12,000 pieces spanning from classic works by Charles and Ray Eames, Eero Saarinen, Marcel Breuer, Walter Gropius, Gao Lenti, Mira Nakashima, and beyond. With an interest in more contemporary furniture from this century too, and also to be able to sell newly produced pieces, we've become partners and dealers of over 70 brands, including Vitra and Herman Miller, 2 that you might recognize. Each brand has their own demands and requirements, so it's not really an easy task. There's a huge amount of gatekeeping in this industry, especially for folks our age and without having immense resources, even as 2 people with nice degrees from Cornell and other places. The keys to work with these brands were not immediately or easily handed over. We've also been fortunate to get coverage in the media, including an article in Forbes and Robb Report and a lecture covered by Dezeen. This is something that we consider essential as business operators, as this coverage helps to create trust among the general public, which is crucial when working with high-end and expensive products. We've also been fortunate to work at various scales for exhibitions, for pop-ups, custom interiors.
And on a superficial level, our business sells furniture, as David mentioned, though as 2 people with backgrounds as designers and researchers, we sort of oscillate between numerous modes of working. So we'll tell you a little bit about this through the presentation today. And this diagram is how we've tried to distill this oscillation into 2 axes. So often we find our work informed by the context of both history and innovation, and everything in between. So that's axis 1. In the other axis, our work is at times structured like research, and at other times more like practice or commerce. All of the activities that make up what Rarify is, functionally, fall somewhere into these 4 quadrants for us. Now, these activities that you see here are the core of our business. If we need to put bread on the table, we've got to do the pragmatic work of building the business, maintaining the business, right? Sales, operations, customer support, marketing, web development. And the fun aspects of the business are installations, events, fulfilling partnerships, experimental software development. On the other end of this axis, we have the most mundane but absolutely essential activities of accounting, bookkeeping, and other mechanical tasks like restoration or documentation, which are always systematized. We really enjoy searching for and acquiring inventory for the business, which is something that David has specialized in, doing archival research and working with new authentication technology like 3D scanning. And we're also always excited when we have opportunities to work in the most interesting parts of our business operations software, our database architecture, data models for design, our own custom product design, or even AI models for design. And as a business partnership, David and I support each other by leaning on each other's strengths and taking on slightly different roles depending on the business's needs. And those are more where those are more focused on technology or operations. And oftentimes our roles do overlap, as our backgrounds that led us to this place have a lot of overlap as well. So I'll pass it back to David, and he'll tell you about the story of how we ended up here and what has led us down this interdisciplinary path.
All right. So I grew up in Hershey, Pennsylvania. a few hours from here, in a family that was, very much interested in making things and kind of getting one's hands dirty. Growing up, my dad was always working on restoring old cars. And while I wasn't so much interested in metalwork, as a 12-year-old or so, I was exposed to what the Eames lounge chair was as an object and kind of became obsessed. And interestingly, that was the precursor to my interest in architecture and design because, as many of you may know, a lot of the most influential furniture designers were trained as architects and often were practicing architects. And so while I wasn't doing much travel at 13, it was a lot, and as one gets their driver's license and learns to drive and go places, it was a lot easier to have access to furniture designed by these legendary architects and designers than it was to visit the Villa Savoye and other international landmarks of architecture. And so I would read about these things and also get to engage in the design work through the restoration process, which was another, you could also look at as saying, buy something cheap, work on it, wax it a little bit and make a few bucks. And so I was able to do all of those things simultaneously. So these are photos from high school and early college of the initial beginnings of a very serious business. And so I had effectively hoarded a substantial furniture collection in high school. And just before getting here to Cornell, some gentleman in the Philippines who was starting a furniture business reached out and said, hey, I'd like, I hear you have some furniture pieces. I'd like to buy everything you have and start a business over here. And so this is an invoice I put together in high school to this guy in the Philippines, and he wired about $120,000 during my senior year of high school, which was incredible. I had been stashing all this stuff in vacant offices in my internship office, a few minutes from actually very close to where our operations are now. And that functionally became the seed capital for what our business is today. Nothing would have really been possible without this kind of occasion. And so 2013, the two of us arrived to Cornell and meet each other and become close friends and collaborators, though there's a little bit of friction initially, arguing about laptops and that sort of thing. And we did all the normal BARC stuff. So we suffered in Rand Hall and made models and MILF Day. This is a photo from an architecture field trip where we were loading a LC4 chaise lounge into the sunroof of a Volvo station wagon with 5 people who would be traveling 6 hours over their head. And some here were nice enough to let us have drafting stools by Charles and Ray Eames briefly, though I don't think that's permitted anymore. And basically what would happen is during breaks and things like that, I would go home to Central PA and I would work on restoration of various projects to keep stimulating the business and keep it running. And this is, what the operations looked like initially, storing it anywhere that I could. If my parents would let me use their basement, I'd store stuff there. If anyone else had space, I'd put furniture there. And as Jenny mentioned, in 2014, I began engaging in research in the Sabin lab alongside some that you may know, like Martin Miller, Andrew Lucia, and others. By 2016, this research included in-depth explorations into ceramics, 3D printing, robotic fabrication, as well as DNA hydrogels. Jeremy was similarly exploring novel fabrication methods in the robotic construction lab and elsewhere as well. And then again, break, go home, store some stuff. This was one of the first spaces I rented for $400 a month. And this was the inventory growing and keeping things as kind of economical as possible, right? So a scrappy start to a business. This was a paper backdrop that I would buy off of Amazon or what have you, or B&H Photo, and a storage unit, nothing particularly fancy. And for reference, at this point in time, with those operations, the business without any employees was doing about $1 million in annual revenue, which was mind-boggling to me. As Jenny mentioned as well, this also led to doing a joint thesis here at Cornell called Traces of Making, and some of the photos from that project. Jeremy continued to work in the Jenny Sabin studio with Microsoft Research. This was Ada, and saw a project in collaboration with Sabin Lab and Arizona State University. And again, we're working together. I go home, stuff is growing. And so a problem is beginning to emerge of not having the resources really to handle the vast amount of stuff that's coming in. So chairs. So what's notable about this time is that around 2018, the vintage business started getting in tractor trailers of furniture from liquidations in New York City. And what might interest you all is that you'll all go and work in architectural practices, or some of you may or may not. And those practices will specify furniture. And so I began to see a kind of emerging problem and also something interesting, which is that I would be getting liquidations from the Genzyme headquarters by Banish, from Harvard Medical School that was designed by Hugh Stubbins, from Kirkland and Ellis, which was an SOM project, and seeing an incredibly high quantity and caliber of work coming in as basically garbage, right? So these are 100 Eames aluminum group chairs worth $500,000. And so by 2020, Jeremy and I had both entered into graduate school, myself, an MDes, and Jeremy doing a SMARCS in design computation and a separate degree in computer science, as well as working in Skylar Tibbetts' lab. This is some work from the self-assembly lab. And we used graduate school as an opportunity both to engage in research, yes, but also to use it as a kind of testing grounds for entrepreneurship. We knew that we wanted to start a business together, but we hadn't yet figured it out precisely. And so we found some accelerators and entrepreneurship opportunities, most of which were at MIT. One was called DesignX that was focused on bringing designers and business people together, which involved mentorship and which really helped to nurture us and kind of guide us through this process.
So at that time, we also began working on research collaboratively, which culminated in another collaborative thesis, this time a graduate thesis. And the goal was to continue our interest in research and see if we could weave business into it as well, see if we can kind of have our cake and eat it too. So we had a vision or kind of an initial question in which we wanted to reimagine what a design gallery could be when presented in a way that was purely experienced in digital space, right? What does that mean? And this meant understanding the objects, understanding design objects like furniture physically and formally, but representing them digitally. And we dreamt that someday 3D scanning might be our secret sauce for the new business or kind of a differentiator. And it turned out to not be the case, but it was a worthwhile part of the experiment. We used structured light scanners, which project white light with a pattern onto the object to identify its location and its form. It has a camera to capture color and textures, which are then mapped onto the high resolution 3D geometry. And here are some ultra high resolution scans of one-of-a-kind works by George and Mira Nakashima, two very important designers. So we began to not only understand design objects as 3D formal information or point clouds, but also as abstract or structured data. How do you represent a chair based not only on its physical form, but also its cultural implications, its perceived value, and its various non-physical attributes? There's a little bit of research on this topic, and we dove deeper into this. So if we represent design objects as rich data, we can also begin to envision how AI might become involved. How do we computationally model the way humans understand, perceive, consume, and think about design objects like furniture or like architecture? Can computation be a gateway into understanding design and also developing an archive of design data for others to mine in the future? So through research at MIT, I worked to develop a new kind of data model for design objects with various attributes shown here, help represent the numerous abstract concepts encapsulated by an artifact of design in the real world. I developed various prototypical artificial intelligence or machine learning algorithms for cleaning design data, augmenting it, building new data sets, and for predictive models which help us to understand how human beings conceptualize design. I conducted a series of investigations into survey methods for directly measuring user perceptions of design artifacts, such as furniture. In what way does a given person appreciate, value, and think about an object, a piece of furniture, or a building that has been carefully designed and considered? What is the life of that design in the real world as experienced by users or occupants? We published the findings as precedent for future researchers to tap. And we went so far as to mathematically evaluate the complexity of these methods to understand how design research could be democratized and made more accessible in the future. And we did this because there really isn't an abundance of research or data available on this topic. What we end up with is a quantitative vector representation of how people value and conceptualize design, which, while not 100% comprehensive, is a step forward, allowing us to develop a rudimentary predictive algorithm that performed remarkably well when compared to real-world data from users. In future work, I hope to build on this, incorporating dependency relationships between the various design attributes of an artifact, as shown here in this directed acyclic graph. So, what does this all mean for Rarify, and how does it inform our work today? Well, as we'll go into a little bit more detail later on, it turned out that running a furniture business, especially an e-commerce business, is a lot like conducting research in the world of big data and design. On a day-to-day basis, we're working with data representations of furniture with metadata, images, and large quantities of it all. Very similar to the graph shown earlier, this is the actual database architecture we use for our e-commerce backend at Rarify today. We've got products, we've got materials, manufacturers, designers, typologies, etc. And there are numerous relationships between each of these data and their attributes. And if we just look at products as one bucket, ignoring all the other data, we currently, as of this morning, have over 3,000 distinct works of design published, with many more in the pipeline, a total of over 35,000 variants of those products in our e-commerce database, and over 150 attributes per product and 18 attributes per variant. So immediately, we easily exceed 1 million data points directly related to furniture design at a given time, and this is constantly growing. The data science work involved in maintaining, building, improving, and accessing this information is no small task, and it represents a healthy challenge that our business handles every day as it grows. David?
So we have a big data problem. Okay, got it. And then we also have a challenge of physical goods and inventory that is not so dissimilar, which can really be chaos if not well organized. So if we take a step back and into our business's timeline to 2020, the precursor business, D-Rose Mod, hired employee number 1 that year to help address the physical organization and infrastructure of the business, specifically for inventory management and photography. Bruno. So our warehouse went from being having furniture and chairs and marble tops and all the things all over the place to infrastructure such as SKU systems, pallet racking, and ways of optimizing physical space. By 2021, our operations were still pretty modest. We had that space that you saw a moment ago, and this, which was a retired firehouse in Lebanon, Pennsylvania. Our photo studio was still a modest 12-foot paper backdrop, and it worked. In 2021, Rarify was incorporated as a business in the last year of graduate school for us, and that same year we started building out a showroom in Lebanon, Pennsylvania. And this is what it looked like before it opened. We were able to pull together modest $2,000 a month for this 10,000 square foot space, thanks to it being in a fairly rural location. And that year was spent largely building out our digital presence, AKA our website, so that there were products that people could buy. We also spent a ton of time trying to create relationships with brands, which was especially tough when no one knew who we were and why they would care or want to work with us. Aside from that, we had some nice vintage stuff and degrees from fancy schools. Now, Emeco, the company that's best known for the Navy chair and kind of historically known for their metal furniture, was the first brand that was willing to take a leap of faith and work with us. And later that year, Jeremy was actually able to teach with Emeco alongside Skylar Tibbetts at MIT. During year 1, we did something like $30,000 to $40,000 in annual revenue because we were really focused on building infrastructure. And as you would guess, that is really not sustainable. What did we do funding-wise? Well, many of our colleagues at MIT and Harvard were taking out venture capital money and investment from big investors and things like that. But instead, we took out a loan from D-Rose Mod, the vintage business, as seed capital for Rarify, and kept our spending as lean as humanly possible. Now, how about marketing? I don't think we talk a lot about marketing in architecture school, right? We realized that reaching people was absolutely crucial, and that every other company that was our competitor had a lot more money than we had, which meant they had the ability to buy ads, which put us at a huge disadvantage. So we tried a lot of different things. We tried moody photographs. We tried making YouTube videos, and nothing really stuck. What we found was that we took our architecture school mentality of seeking perfection, and that was not a great recipe for sustainably trying to do this and create a marketing plan, right? We would spend a week or two working on one YouTube video to get a few views, or we'd take these moody photographs and think that that was going to lead to immense data and rich results. It did not. So 2022 comes along. Eventually we hit our groove, which was a research-based approach of testing videos on social media, videos being key, and studying what the Instagram algorithm responded well to. And during this time, the algorithm was being focused specifically on video and kind of waning off of photography. Design objects were better understood through video anyways, as we could really teach and educate through speaking about them and dynamically showing different angles and characteristics of the pieces that we had to show. We were not simply making videos for fun without intention. Instead, we would create batches of different typologies of content, and we would then look at the data to see which types of content received more views and engagement, and also which products people engaged most with, right? So we're looking at types of content and specific pieces. The Eames work had been particularly successful, for instance, because of basically SEO optimization. To our surprise, educational content, specifically 30 to 60-second videos of us talking about the history and analysis of different furniture pieces, turned out to be the most successful. That's actually on the longer format end of general social media videos. And 2022 ended on a high note with an article published in Forbes. This led to an increase in web traffic on our site, interest from other news outlets, and a form of validation that would help lure in other brands and create more trust with customers. So we're not showing you this because we just want to brag about an article. It really was meaningful in helping to grow the business and validate different parts of the business. While the business did grow modestly that year, we were able to learn a lot more about how to market our business and create hype. So by 2023, we had educational videos getting well over 1 million views regularly, which is incredible. That created enthusiasm, which allowed for design organizations and created enthusiasm amongst designers. So we were able to do interviews and collaborations with designers and artists such as Karen Rashid, Melanie Barnett, Dr. Wu, a famous tattoo artist, Stephen Burks, among others. This year, the business has finally found more of a footing and also allowed us to focus on building competence in different parts of the business and muscle in varying domains, expanding into different markets, trying to get larger projects with architects and real estate developers, which we've learned will really be necessary in order to grow in a meaningful way, and to do significant designer and brand collaborations with some of the partners who we work with already. So we'll give you a bit of a state of the firm now to show you where we're at. On social media, as of today, we have 201,000 followers. Nice. Our physical space includes this fully built out 10,000 square foot showroom, 80,000 square feet of operational space spread across multiple buildings in the same complex, that Bethlehem Steel complex from before. And just to give you a sense of scale, this is the short side of the building. It spans about a half mile long. We have not only a full-time photographer, which is no longer Bruno because he's too busy, as well as a photographer's assistant, a 24 by 24 foot professional cyclorama wall for photography, where we're now pumping out photography on 25 to 30 SKUs or lots of items per week, and a professional pantograph lighting system that we're very proud of and we admire from AAP, as well as a 5,000 square foot workshop to do restoration, both light and more intensive restoration. We've expanded into another steel building and invested in industrial equipment, such as forklifts, a box truck, and just recently a scissor lift, which has been very exciting. We've also started to look at how we can partner with local fabricators to one day start our own line of furniture. That's part of the dream, but we need the resources to do that under a Rarify brand or maker. So this is a collaborator in Lebanon, Pennsylvania as well that does some work with Emica. In Philly, we've taken a leap of faith to invest in a showroom. This is not because we feel that it was truly crucial from a numbers perspective for our business, but really because many of the brand partners that we work with require or have this as a kind of prerequisite to work with their brand, which again makes this very inaccessible for someone trying to start a business. This investment is not insignificant by any means. We're on the final stretch with renovations, and I'll be lucky enough to live above it and guard it, or staff it. And this gives you a sense of the kind of work that we'll have on display there, a kind of blend of kind of highbrow and more accessible pieces, including some great and rare works by George Amir Nakashima, Charles Henry Eames, among others. We have a team that handles professional restoration in-house, as well as refinishers, metal polishers, powder coaters, sandblasters, and upholsterers who we work with regularly on a weekly basis. Photography has been an immensely important part of our business. We think of it as an extension of architectural photography and representation. And that and our education from Cornell here has made that a very meaningful part. It's something we invest a huge amount of time and energy in to improve and get right. So we have a team of shippers that we've worked with since I was in high school, over 15 years. They oversee the quality and of packing and shipping, along with white glove shippers who go from Washington, D.C. to New York City on almost a weekly basis.
So all of the infrastructure that David just shared about has not only allowed us to sell furniture to customers, but in the process, it has also allowed us to do what we really love to do, conduct design research. And we're able to achieve this at various scales. And so we've been able to do things like create a design exhibition of experimental furniture with Emico and MIT. Create pop-ups with major brands like Solomon in New York City. We were invited to create an exhibition at the International Contemporary Furniture Fair, or ICFF, in New York this year, where we showed metal furniture design from the past, present, and future. We got to work with the German company Grohe on their water studio. And we were asked to design the talk space with USM at Design Miami. And part of the reason we've sought out working with manufacturers and designers we admire from a design perspective specifically is that it allows us to research today's state of the art in design. We're able to engage directly with designers like Andres Riesinger and Julia Esquet, who created the first commercial furniture product that originated as an NFT. Now, Moy, a Dutch company co-founded by Marcel Wanders, manufactures this chair. And they're also developing cutting-edge technology for authentication. So their methods involve NFC scanning to query data about these individual physical artifacts that exist out in the real world. Another company we work with, Cartel, collaborated with the designer Philippe Starck, who you might be familiar with, as well as Autodesk Research on this chair. They developed one of the earliest examples of an AI-assisted furniture design using generative algorithms and Fusion 360. Called the AI chair. We're able to see the development of designs like the Shift chair by Jonas Forsman, which uses 3D knitting to achieve customizable programmed skins for furniture. And finally, Gieta, which is a company founded in Poland by Oskar Gieta, whose vision for the company emerged from his PhD and postdoctoral research at ETH Zurich. Now, they've developed an innovative technology in which various metals are laser cut in flat sheets, welded along all the edges, and then inflated with superheated air. This creates shockingly robust structures all the way from the scale of a stool to the scale of an architectural space. There's also some historical research and archival research that we do, which David will go into.
So some unique research opportunities have also kind of risen through this. We've gone to work alongside the architecture firm SOM, diving into their furniture archives. While it is yet to be extensively written about or exhibited, SOM designed a huge amount of furniture during the 1950s to 1980s, specifically for SOM projects. So it kind of stayed quite insular. Much of the work fits into the legacy of corporate modernism under the leadership of Gordon Bunshaft and SOM furniture and interior designer Davis Allen. What this basically means is we've been able to track down and purchase a collection of works across the country, sometimes hitting gold from the standpoint of provenance. So as a nerd and collector, provenance is if you have a microphone and then you know that Elvis Presley used the microphone and you have a document that authenticates that it was Elvis Presley's microphone, et cetera, things that help to validate and give historical context to an object. So this is one side table that has been a really rich example of this process. We were given kind of special access to some of their archival drawings. And this is a table we were able to track down that maintained its original label from ABC, the American Broadcasting Company. SOM worked on that project in 1965. We've been able to, yes, document that piece so that we have documentation for the future, but also then look into their archival drawings, identify that exact piece based on the measurements, and have some of the most robust documentation and provenance for modernist objects of really anything that I can think of. This is another great example of a desk in our collection with photography from Ezra Stoller, one of probably the first or second most famous architectural photographers alongside Julia Schulman, from an SOM project with photography corresponding to it. This is an Eames lounge chair in our collection, custom ordered circa 1963 in all black with a black frame, which Charles and Ray were usually not cool with custom orders. It was almost always rosewood. And we believe it to be from Gordon Bunshaft's home in East Hampton called the Travertine House that he designed alongside SOM, again with corresponding photography from Ezra Stoller, thanks to the access that we've been given alongside SOM. Out of passion and rigor, these are the chairs closely tied to SOM's history that we've amassed as a collection of, and then photograph these pieces professionally so that we have access to this documentation in perpetuity, even if some of these pieces sell along the way. Again, we are a business, but looking at this through a historical lens. These are iterations of tables also as part of SOM's history during that time, which are housed at our facility. And cabinets or desks in numerous materials such as steel, aluminum, and precious wood such as olive ash burl from important projects such as Chase Manhattan Bank, among many others. Often the materials in these pieces were closely tied to the kind of innovation of some of their buildings. Running our business, we've been able to continually build up an archival data set representing an enormous volume of rich design data. So for years, we've also collected and bought or sold works by Knoll and Herman Miller from their beginnings many decades ago until now. Knoll in the 1940s began, and then Herman Miller before then. We pay close attention to and document the original labels and markings, which indicate the era of production. We have dealt in some of the rarest examples from both companies, some highlighted here, including works from Venturi and Scott Brown, Florence Knoll, Pierre Generet, and Eros Saarinen. Another specialty in our data set is furniture designed by Charles and Ray Eames. We have one of the most comprehensive Eames collections in the world. And at this very moment in time, we have thousands of pieces by Herman Miller and thousands more pieces from Knoll in our collection.
So if we consider that the physical inventory that David's talking about is over approximately 12,000 pieces and continually changes over time, and we've got thousands more works of design that we don't warehouse ourselves, but we do sell, each with over 10 images and over 150 data attributes per item, we start to understand that the work of running this business is not simply to sell furniture. We're building hopefully one of the richest and most robust data sets of design objects, perhaps in the world. The future possibilities begin to seem endless when we imagine how data can be mined and used for education, for the development of algorithms and software, for the production of books, publications, and exhibitions, and for the development of future designs and the growth of the design business. It's been an honor to speak to you all today and return to Cornell. And we'd love to open the conversation up to any questions you might have, especially any of the students who are here in the audience today. Thank you.
Yeah, and for those of you that are on Zoom, if you could post your questions in the chat.
Thank you for this very thoughtful presentation. I've done some research about some of these famous brands, particularly Knoll, and I know that since the 1960s they have given license to other countries to produce their brand. But because I've worked in the archives, I know that there's been a lot of like fake furniture that is produced, especially internationally, with the brand name. And there are a lot of legal disputes between Knoll and these other countries. How do you ensure that the product that you collect is not fake?
Yeah, it's a great question, and thanks for bringing that up. So especially in the last 20 years, the kind of proliferation of knockoff culture has really, I mean, exploded. I think the easy answer is saying just from spending tens of thousands of hours obsessing over every little detail of every piece of furniture that we deal in is kind of how we learn to identify those authentic examples. I think the more effective answer is that what I love about much of this design work starting from the legacy of kind of the 1920s and interest in manufacturing and making everything exactly the same way for the sake of economics and being able to make these pieces accessible, is that virtually all of these pieces are manufactured and made in a factory, which means that when you have the privilege to get a hold of examples that you know are authentic and have good provenance on, you're able to learn and therefore have data on what authentic examples look like, what the material qualities are, how they wear, how they age, and also to gain a kind of, frankly, like sixth sense of how old something is really just based on material. So from dealing with dozens of Vasily chairs, I can identify now without any labels, the era of production, which factory it came from, based on specific curvatures, bends in the tube details. And it's made it very easy to identify knockoffs because first off, typically those are much newer production. And secondly, there is almost always compromise in quality. Something that's been very scary for us and that's been in a way fulfilling and interesting is that we get to work with all of these brands we've admired today, right? So we get to work with USM Hauler, with Vitra, with Herman Miller, et cetera. And so we get to have a kind of lens into what really scares the shit out of them as it relates to this knockoff culture. So what Moy has done to try and kind of go against that is they've come out with the button, which is this NFC technology that Jeremy was talking about, as one way of trying to fight that. There's a nonprofit organization that we belong to called Be Original Americas that helps take care of legal work to help fight that. And Emeco has had to deal with that with a Navy chair, even with domestic companies. Target, there were some cases with IKEA a while back, Restoration Hardware. And recently, USM Hauler, that is an extremely difficult product to create replicas of. Recently, those have come onto the market as well. So it's the brands are in a way constantly playing whack-a-mole, and in a way it becomes our job to help spread knowledge and information about the value of authenticity so that people value buying the real deal and hold on to provenance and are willing to spend for that. So that's kind of part of what we see as our duty in making these videos.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. This was a lovely presentation. I have like a comment / request, but then also another question. I'll start off with I'm really curious to see what you guys' houses look like what type of furniture you guys have, what chairs, tables. So I'm really curious, but the question is, you guys seem to gather a huge data set of references from the past and learning from it. You guys mentioned that you're looking to have your own design practice with furniture. What approach are you guys going to take whenever you're looking into the past, or are you guys going to be innovating or reinventing the wheel, or what approach are you guys going to take in your own take? Thanks.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for the questions. David has a lot of Eames furniture in his house, which is pretty awesome. He has a really fantastic swiveling ottoman Eames lounge chair, which I greatly admire. And one of my favorite pieces is a Gietta mirror, which has been inflated. So addressing your second question, we haven't quite gotten there yet. You know, being a relatively young company, our approach so far has been to kind of build up a sustainable business first, be able to support ourselves, build something that's kind of self-sustaining over the years in terms of revenue that comes in. And then once we sort of reach that point, and we're sort of getting close to it, then I think what we'd like to do is tap the archive of design that we've collected, do an analysis of the pieces that we have, of the data that we have from pieces that have sold, where they've sold to, who they've sold to, what sort of price points exist in the market that we think we could potentially address. So the kind of pragmatic baseline from a business perspective. Excuse me. And then once we sort of identify that opening, I think that's where the fun begins. Something that we've really enjoyed is being able to engage with a community of designers who come from all different backgrounds, product design, education, architecture. Stephen Burks that we mentioned earlier, Chen Kai Williams. These are all people that we've spoken to, that we can learn from, who have experience designing products and spaces and architecture. And I think collaborating and engaging with those people could be a really fantastic first step. Because, you know, we're young, we're just starting this business. There are far more experienced people out there. So we're sort of staying in the learning mindset.
Yeah, and also, I'd like to add to that too, which is that we were talking to Professor Marcelo Coelho last night kind of about this topic and brainstorming, and we think about it regularly. So Instagram has been interesting. You know, Instagram, we all flip on our phones and we look at stuff and we post or don't post, and it has a function. It's self-fulfilling or what have you. But for us, we use it as a helpful tool for our business, right? And so what's been interesting for us is that Instagram is its own kind of data-based venture capital model for marketing success. And you might look at putting design out into the world as its own example of that. You put something out into the world and you see if it works or doesn't work. So we've now posted something like 500 or 600 or 700 videos and have been shocked to see what has and hasn't been successful. Recently, earlier this year, we were flown out to Japan, which was amazing, to work with a company called Hida Sangyo. And we did some videos on things we thought would be interesting and captivating and successful. And there was a small meditation stool that's about this big that looks like a kind of plank with a stub beneath it. And that video got something like 5 million views. And we actually, for once, sold quite a few of those stools, which was earth-shattering for us. Usually we make videos for companies that are well represented on the internet, and we have no idea because they buy it from other places. So we imagine that in this century, we will use data like that as an informing tool. And so why did people buy that product from us? Well, there were only 2 places in the United States where you could get it, us and a place on the West Coast. And the price point was about $350, which meant that it was, I guess, an impulse purchase for a certain demographic of people looking for that product. And so those learnings for us as what creates now a data set have been very helpful, and that will certainly inform how we make careful and educated decisions of starting our own design brand one day.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. It was great and it was inspiring. I had a very simple question wherein in today's day and age, like, of course, we're talking about the past, which could be quantified. But in today's day and age, we have so many design objects that are being made. How do you decide what makes it to the archival and what's worth it and what's not? Like, what is something that is sort of aggressively leading the decision, or is there something that you all have in your mind which sort of guides this decision?
Well, I think there are, thanks for the question. I think there are 2 ways that we might approach this. So the question was, you know, how do we decide what makes it into the selection or the archive? When it comes to new products, I can speak to that specifically. When we're looking at design that is being produced today, we showed a few slides of some companies that we work with, some designers, some manufacturers. We're, for the most part, just using our own intuition for that. But, you know, on the deeper level, we're doing an analysis of the product's quality. We're doing an analysis of the designers that are producing that work and their body of work throughout their lives, right? So the rigor in the development of the Gietta pieces, for example, is pretty unbelievable and unprecedented, right? When you consider the kind of range of quality of furniture as a medium for design. You know, this is a result of PhD, years of postdoctoral research, new technology and innovation that was invented to create structures, right? It's a new use of a material. It's a monomaterial piece. It's recyclable. It's incredibly sustainable compared to most furniture. So we're kind of looking at those areas and we're trying to make a fair assessment of the quality of the design. And if we're going to sort of promise customers that they're getting something good that's going to last them a long time, we need to actually do the research and do the homework. Did you want to speak a little bit about the past products?
Yeah. For the curation of vintage pieces, it's a little bit of a different mindset because in most cases we are purchasing it with our own money, which is, and so price becomes a huge factor, of course, but we also try and look at it through a curatorial lens. So there's some idea of trying to beat the market and look at emerging markets or things that bodies of work that were not kind of loved or respected as much. I would say the work of Gail Lenti, Venturi Scott Brown, et cetera, were not as loved years ago and you used to be able to find for mopkis, as they would say, but is now quite coveted and expensive. So a lot of that is seeking out pieces that are interesting based on an understanding of design history, and also really scouring, for us mostly it's the United States, to find opportunities and projects and interesting places where you know that great quality design was specified. And sometimes going out on a limb and taking things in, not knowing the history, but knowing that it will be your responsibility to learn about them while they're in hand, because you have a vested interest in exploring it as well, which makes it a lot of fun.
We have a couple. We have a couple questions online in the chat. So the first, thank you so much for an incredible presentation. What do you think makes for an iconic object? There are pieces like the Eames lounge chair or the Hang It All that have become so iconic, so beloved by design-focused people and not non-design-focused people. What are the traits, characteristics of this type of object? Why do you think we haven't had tons of these objects recently?
So the question was about what makes something iconic, and this is kind of a question that we're always wondering about. This was sort of an inspiration for the MIT thesis question in some ways, right? How does somebody value a piece of design and what makes it sort of stick? There isn't really one answer because it's subjective, right? It's different for every person. What I did find in that research was that it was highly personal, and it did have to do with one's unique associations in terms of the context of where they're from, what they like personally, right? So there's kind of a taste aspect to it. One factor that was surprisingly important was comfort, right? So the practical elements of a piece of design, of functional design, are still very important, right? Despite our ambitions to create design that is provocative, interesting, unique, experimental, sometimes the ones that really stick well are the ones that function well also. So it's kind of important as a lesson for designers to remember that, even in an era like today, where we can pretty much imagine and create anything that we can think of.
I think another approach as far as looking at iconic objects, yes, from the 20th century, is looking at how those objects relate to innovation. And so I think we're kind of in the business now of forecasting future iconography, right? And so it's easy for us to look at the stool and work by Gietta and imagine and understand that those are future icons and contemporary icons, because there's truly, it was the first in the commercial furniture market. It's associated with what is becoming and is now an important manufacturer and designer, and also hugely innovative in the context with which it's working in. You can also look at the furniture by, of course, Charles and Ray Eames, right? So why was that work so iconic? Well, in the United States, they were dealing with innovations post-World War II, and work in fiberglass and molded fiberglass was hugely innovative at that time, which kind of cemented its iconography. And it was accessible and kind of blew up all over the United States because it was accessible price-wise. Molded plywood, that technology also emerged from their leg splint famously from World War II technology. So that is, again, innovation and technology fitting for this design tech lecture series, leading to its iconic status. But I think technology can play a huge role in that, which we love.
Yeah, just one last note also, the aspect of accessibility that David mentioned is really important as well, right? Because if something is completely inaccessible from a price point of view, it experiences a great barrier to becoming iconic. So, there are plenty of exceptions to that, but the kind of oscillation or back and forth, like we mentioned, between the engineering of the product and how it's produced and creating a product that is actually economical for someone to buy, as well as the balance of a really high quality design helps make something iconic.
Thanks for that. I wanted to follow up on what you were just discussing in terms of kind of accessibility and kind of the next steps for you and your company. Specifically like accessibility, the kind of democratization of design that I associate with the Eameses at a certain moment post-war, and Rarify, like the kind of authentic, vintage, rare, right? And like, do you think somehow the research will enable you to democratize design and balance the desire for the, I don't know if that's the word, authentic or rare, or just of quality, like you were saying, in terms of function and something that reflects the cultural aspirations of a moment in time?
Thank you for your question, Major. Yeah, I think we try to balance this approach in a number of different ways because first off, part of our interest in making educational videos, for instance, is trying to democratize what is often gatekept data, information, storytelling. And so in a way, Nikos Agrafos is this designer who was hugely important in SOM's history. No one really knows who he is because everyone's collecting it for themselves, like me in the past, and keeping it for themselves and letting the market stay low so they can hog all of it up. And one day the Met will do a retrospective, right? Instead, we're putting these videos out and no one's paying us to do them. And so education allows for democratization in that way. The other thing that we've been trying to be very conscientious about is price point and democratization of the products that we carry. And it's really challenging to do that in a context now where we're largely acting as kind of, you could call us, well, curators is a nice way of putting it. So by the pieces that we deal with that are vintage actually have a pretty significant challenge as far as democratizing those pieces and wanting for those things to be inexpensive. On one hand, there's a great sustainability element, right? They come to us and we get to sell them and repurpose them, so that's great. But even processing individual groups of furniture costs us about $100 per SKU, and so that already puts a lack of accessibility of kind of ingesting that to be able to put it on the market. By working with brands that are selling new products, it gives us the ability to find brands that are offering beautifully designed and noteworthy and or iconic furniture pieces at a variety of different price points. And so, for instance, the work of Cartel, we particularly appreciate because that work is so much more accessible given that it's often in plastic than USM Hauler, which for a small cabinet is $2,000 or $3,000.
Yeah, I think you addressed most of it, but I'll also add, by sort of pairing the newer products that are high quality, that we've assessed, that we believe might be iconic, which are more accessible, with the kind of old canon or icons from the 20th century, we're hoping to sort of have those sort of ride on the back of the giants, right? So, if we have highly inaccessible pieces next to more accessible ones, the sort of fame of those less accessible ones might help to build the more accessible ones up.
And I think adding to that too, there are different, the question earlier asking about, so how are we going to decide what we do next and how to carry on a business model? There's a very tempting business model that would maybe be easier for us to carry onward, which a lot of others in our industry kind of do. The Future Perfect is one example. They're in this incredible design gallery that sells work by Chen Kai Williams, and where the price point is for very, very well-off affluent people in New York City, Los Angeles, et cetera. That could be an approach of a business model that we move into. I think we have a resistance to that because we're more interested in democratizing the information about those objects as well as the objects themselves and being able to work with customers and designers and people who are not simply dealing with the 0.001%.
So it's quite interesting to see how friendship between both of you has produced these great results. And I think I like better be on the lookout for friends also. Yeah. So my question is, looking at the year you started the firm till now, the span of few years. So how are you able to push your firm to this limelight where you are able to have collaborations with giants in the built environment and all across? And also the second question is, looking back through your experiences as co-CEO of these great firms, what are your challenges, like the greatest challenges you faced, and how have you been able to resolve this so that we can also learn from your experience and also know how to run things?
So thank you for the questions. The first question was about how in a short span of time have we been able to, have the opportunity to work with, famous, well-known companies, et cetera, et cetera. I think we sort of got lucky in a way because, we started experimenting and posting these videos, and that has probably been one of the most significant drivers for us. We don't spend any money on ads, so all of the exposure that we receive through social media is organic exposure. And it's really been a practice of just testing and sort of using the scientific method to kind of figure out what folks are interested in looking at. And oftentimes we'll put information out into the world using these, these videos as a platform that we're absolutely unsure about. It's a constant form of experimentation. And through that experimentation and the kind of systematic rigor of creating that information, we've not only been able to create an archive for people to access for free, but we've also been able to grow exponentially the exposure that we've received. And so through that, it helps us reach folks and it helps us kind of make a case for ourselves. That said, it's hard work to do that, and we have a lot of sweat, effort.
As far as the second part of it, which is about challenges in the business and the less glamorous parts of things, I think one thing that's been very challenging is understanding and dealing with the kind of real life challenges that exist behind the curtain of lots of great social media engagement. And something we run up against quite frequently is a perception from other brands and companies that we have the ability to afford to collaborate with them in ways that are absolutely impossible for us, or there's an expectation that you are to be at the Milan Expo, to be at Chicago at NeoCon, to be in New York at ICFF, to pay for hotels, to bring staff there, to do all these things. And I mean, even now we're 4 years in, and there's in startup culture, they say it takes 3 to 5 years to really get off the ground, that sort of thing. Yeah, we're not in a place that we're in a place that we can kind of sort of pull salaries that are kind of sort of okay, maybe-ish, and running a business together where you're going right out of architecture school and you have a great job candidate with 2 degrees from MIT and another from Cornell in computer science too, and sacrificing and taking, a less juicy salary than what you would get at San Francisco with a big tech company. That's both a reflection of meaningful friendship and also of, being able to take risks. And so for years, both of us compromised in a huge amount financially because we both have equity in this company and care about it. And we've also, specifically from a challenge perspective, we have resisted the temptation to take investment from anywhere else, which Blue Dot, for instance, another big American company, did. And we've seen plenty of collaborators and folks at MIT who took investment and were able to get off the ground. Our interest in not taking investment and struggling through it has been so that we have the ability to do the meaningful work that we seek to do and invest in education and authentication and the topics that we care about, as opposed to having other parties kind of breathing down, looking down on us and telling us that we have to do this, that, and the other thing. Yeah.
Hi, thank you guys so much for the wonderful talk. I really, David in particular, your story of this high school business is really beautiful. As an avid dumpster diver, just wow.
Ithaca reuse.
Yeah,
I don't go anymore. It's opportunity for you all, right?
yeah. All mine. I was wondering, your business essentially operates or operated as a upcycling mechanism for a long time. How do you build that into your story, the story of your brand? How do you see that affecting your future?
It's a really interesting question, which we haven't thought a lot about. I think Stephen Burks was a mentor of ours in grad school, and his main advice to us was, don't reinvent the wheel. You guys have this great vintage business that you can kind of rely on as a stepping stone, and you're passionate and care about design and technology. Do something about it and make a business that kind of develops based on that foundation. Okay. So what we're really proud of now in the way that we incorporate that dumpster diving idea into our business is that, yes, it gives us an amazing amount of content to create from. We have an endless amount of amazing furniture. We just got a cabinet in that had a label from Seagram's, aka it was a Jens Rism design cabinet with original provenance from the Seagram Tower by Mies van der Rohe that we found provenance with, right? We have this amazing stuff coming in constantly.
Where did that come from?
From the Seagram building. Bought it at auction for $500. It's amazing. It was just labeled, cabinet black Seagrams, but it was just a black cabinet. There's no reason. And then it came in and it had a label that said Seagram FF&E with the Seagram logo. And then I found in Ezra Stoller's archive the photo of the cabinet there. Pretty cool. So anyway, the kind of one part of it is that it allows us to do amazing storytelling. And I think something that we've identified and studied from the videos that we produce is that this audience here and others who are interested in design, there's some number of people who really do not care about a brand new cartel stool that you can buy somewhere for $200, at least from an Instagram perspective. Maybe you want it in your bathroom or your house or whatever. But they do really care about the incredible stories and the interesting, what happens to go through the restoration on an Eames lounge chair. What are the stories and kind of particular details of how you can authenticate a Barcelona chair? And so the knowledge that's been created through dumpster diving and buying and restoring a lot of Barcelona chairs is that knowledge can then be proliferated and explained to you all so that you all can beat us to the Nikos Agrafos table, to the next Barcelona chair, to buy up all the stuff at Ithaca Reuse that we would love to be buying and miss dearly. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, beautiful. I just wanted to made it to Ithaca Reuse.
To add one note about restoration, David mentioned restoration as part of this. Something that we also sort of keep in the back of our minds, we don't always say it, but the implication is always there, is that anything that we're selling as part of our business is something that is hopefully high quality, that might become an heirloom, that it could be resold or repurposed or refurbished or recycled in the future, right? So also sharing information for free on the internet about maintenance of furniture, about caring for materials, about wood species, about finishes, about different types of metal, about different types of joinery, about connections and the way materials come together. That's something that we try to kind of weave in because we'd like to influence the culture, at least in the US and hopefully beyond, sort of away from disposal and waste and more towards longevity in the kind of physical things we experience in the world, right? If we're all kind of in the business of making stuff and making more stuff, we should probably know how to take care of it and maybe also share that information with other people.
We have time for one final question.
It's kind of silly, but I was gonna say, did you bring like a discount code for
You can email us. We'll give you some.
I was at a lecture.
All right. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, David, for a really inspiring lecture and kickoff to our Design Tech Lecture Series this fall. And I recall, this was a while ago, David, you confiding in me when you were still a student saying, Jenny, I'm just worried that I'm going to end up flipping chairs. And I was like, I don't know. You've figured out how to do something pretty special and make money at it while you're, an undergraduate and prior to that as a still student. But, your collaboration that started here, engaging in research with faculty, conducting a joint thesis, and now blossoming into this incredible collaboration, I think is a real inspiration for our design tech students and also for students that are participating in our collaborating colleges. So thanks so much for taking us through your story and opening up the hood and talking about your sort of pain points and also points of success. And thanks to all of you for coming out and for those of you on Zoom.